Unity of Houston is an inclusive church where we seek to understand and live the teachings of Jesus and other spiritual masters. At Unity, we welcome all people from all spiritual paths and every walk of life. We celebrate the diversity of our city and of our world, and we teach love, tolerance, and oneness, seeking to live in harmony with open minds and open hearts.
Wherever you are in your spiritual path, you are always welcome at Unity. Join us and discover that the life of your dreams is already within you.
And happy St. Patrick's Day, everyone. I'm wearing green. I don't think I'm the only one, am I? We have some green wearers, I'm sure, out there celebrating. I had to find out about what that green was all about, so I was looking around online and I came across an article on National Geographic's Kids that said that leprechauns are one of the reasons you're supposed to wear green on St. Patrick's Day. And the reason is because if you wear green, you become invisible to leprechauns and then they can't pinch you. I guess this is a problem maybe in Ireland of leprechauns pinching you and you don't want to be pinched. It's also supposed to be good for good luck and a representation of Irish ancestry. Well, my question for you in wearing the green and leprechauns is, what's pinching you? What's pinching you? We're opening up stuck spaces tonight, or stuck places within us, so we want to know what's pinching you. Last week, Reverend Karen shared naming the demons, the practice of recognizing when anger, fear, boredom, judgment, sleepiness, all the number of different experiences that can show up in our meditation practice. And tonight, as we continue on A Path with Heart, the Jack Kornfield book, we are going to explore insistent visitors and difficult problems. So this is like the demons that, it's even beyond that, the demons. It's the specific things that keep showing up in your consciousness that are the stories that just don't seem to want to let go. And I think about this like, I tend to get this junk mail at home. I belong to AAA. Anybody belong to AAA? And they send you, when you're a member of AAA, this information about life insurance. I don't want AAA life insurance. They will send it in all these different packages, a long form that shows like specially for you, Jeanmarie Eck, confidential for Jeanmarie Eck, open now, open immediately, all these different envelopes, different sizes and things, and they know my information, but I don't want this. So it just keeps coming, and why don't they get it? I'm not buying it, and it keeps coming. So this is kind of like our mind, how these insistent visitors seem to show up at our house in different forms, our inner house, right? They know our names, they know stuff about us, but we don't want them, and we keep trying to give them away or shred them, and they just keep showing up, right? So what are you noticing in your practice that you're trying to get rid of? I want to share with you a poem that my spiritual director invited me to check out, and so when your spiritual director tells you to do something, you go and do it because it's probably really good. So this is a poem by Rumi, and it's called From Chickpea to Cook. Chickpea to cook. You know, little chickpeas, garbanzo beans, we also call them. So here it is. A chickpea leaps almost over the rim of the pot where it's being boiled. Why are you doing this to me? The cook knocks him down with the ladle. Don't you try to jump out. You think I'm torturing you. I'm giving you flavor so you can mix with spices and rice and be the lovely vitality of a human being. Remember when you drank rain in the garden? That was for this. Grace first, sexual pleasure, then a boiling new life begins, and the friend has something good to eat. Eventually, the chickpea will say to the cook, "Boil me some more. Hit me with the skimming spoon. I can't do this by myself. I'm like an elephant that dreams of gardens back in Hindustan and doesn't pay attention to his driver. You're my cook, my driver, my way into existence. I love your cooking." The cook says, "I was once like you, fresh from this ground. Then I boiled in time and boiled in the body, 2 fierce boilings. My animal soul grew powerful. I controlled it with practices and boiled some more, and boiled once beyond that, and became your teacher." So let's consider the little chickpea. What is that in us? The chickpea that doesn't want to be boiled, that doesn't want to simmer and get all the spices and flavor, the rice and the stew that's happening. Repeated difficulties arise within our consciousness that don't seem to want to transform, that are these chickpeas. And we keep getting stuck in the same thought patterns or limiting beliefs. But once we can name them, once we can identify them, name them, and we can hold them more lightly and discover what is at their root. What is at their root? When we see them without judgment, we become what Ram Dass called a connoisseur of our neuroses. We get to really know the pattern of what's happening within us and what keeps showing up, and then we're ready for a deeper opening. When we pay careful attention to what in Buddhism is called the demon or the hindrance, that thinking that keeps us from peace, right? We can see it as a contraction of the fullness of who we are, right? We're expansive spirit, divine spirit, or what in Buddhism is called Buddha nature, and unity we call Christ nature. That's our true nature. When we get into contracting, grasping, that is what the Buddha called the source of all human suffering, this contracting. Jack Kornfield said that in the years, many years of the beginning of his practice, his first years of practice, that he struggled with restlessness and lust, doubt and anger, and he thought that these were the root of his suffering. And as he listened more closely, he discovered that underlying all of those things, anger, lust, doubt, and restlessness, was fear underneath it all. And he explained that fear is what contracts us and gives us this false sense of a small self, a small self. The small self grasped at limited beliefs, it grasps at feelings in our body, it tries to protect us, like the chickpea that doesn't want to be boiled. All he knows is chickpea, being a chickpea, right? And doesn't know that he can be a whole meal, a delicious meal to be served. So it's that limited thinking. So beneath this body of fear, the contracted self, we find our natural state, our Buddha state, that is wholeness, that is openness. This is what is called our original state, or the ground of being. So meditation is our practice for coming into conscious awareness of what it is within us that constitutes these limiting beliefs. This is how we can bring awareness to us, otherwise we're kind of walking around and it's running us. So through meditation, we can open it up. So this process of opening up our stuck places and not referring to the general problems that are named as demons, the sleepiness, the judgment, the irritation. These are repeated patterns of thoughts, moods, and sensations that are very specific. So this is a visitor that is asking for our deeper and our fuller attention. And to bring our deeper and fuller attention, this involves forgiveness. This involves acceptance and understanding, an open heart to this visitor that keeps coming to call. Otherwise, we move into resistance, right, and aversion. So we're opening to this visitor, this we could call what we might think is the junk mail of our consciousness, but that it really has some gold and some gift for us as we open up to it. There are 4 basic principles for learning to open up our stuck places and release fear that Jack Kornfield shares in this chapter. And the first one is to expand our field of attention. So this is something we began our practice with in the meditation tonight. We're first recognizing the repeated stories that we tell ourselves. And he says that we can call them our top 10 tunes, our top 10 list, so we could even number them. Oh, there's number 1, my parents got divorced. There's number 2, the AAA junk mail. There's number 3, whatever, as the stories, if that's something, I swear it doesn't bother me that much. So one of my frequent visitors is this critic, or I could call him the intimidator, or just Tim. Just give that experience a name, give it a name. Hello, nice to see you. How are you? What do you have to say to me today? So it becomes like a friendly interaction within yourself, within your own consciousness, rather than allowing it to be like this tormentor sometimes that we can have in our own mind. But it's not enough just to become friendly with this experience. When we encounter a repeated story like divorce of your parents, and then it can play out in your mind and the whole story of who got what the experience was like in the trial, how the children hashed it out, all of those kind of things that involve the whole emotional journey of that experience can start running within us as we tap into that, or as it just shows up in our mind. So the teaching here with expand your field of attention is, as that situation starts running its course of the story, is to take it into the body. How does this thought feel in the body? We tend to disconnect with our bodies, and we're trained to be in our mind. Our mind is always thinking, well, my mind can figure it out. Our mind's always trying to work it out. And so we can get back into the body and may have to return our attention into our body every 10 seconds, if it takes that much, to retrain ourselves to get back into the body sense of our experience, so that we can work with these feelings and process them and move them through, because we've been trying to work with them at the level of the mind. And so noticing, how does that thought feel in the body? Does it feel like, where is it in the body? Is it a tightness in the chest? Is it a knot in the stomach? Is it a pain in my side? Is it a sharpness in my shoulder? Just naming it, and sharpness. Say sharpness. And just staying with it and noticing it. And sometimes when I do that, when I notice that sensation, sometimes I recognize that it's not as big as I thought it was. It seemed like it was this huge experience, and maybe it's just happening in one little part of my body. Or it might be that as I bring attention to it, it kind of relaxes a little bit and like it opens up, the energy of it opens up. And so you want to just expand to whatever new feelings are happening as you're bringing your attention to this, what you've named, let's say it's sharpness, what feelings arise with that sharpness as you're bringing it into your awareness. So it will evolve. So that sharpness may evolve into sadness, which may evolve into grief. And as you grieve, the pattern becomes resolved. So we can do this through the body connection, and that's a powerful practice that comes to us through insight meditation, Buddhism, that we can work with the repeated patterns and stories. And so they're often fueled by unacknowledged emotion and feeling that's underneath it, that we've gone into our head and we've disconnected with our feelings. So that is one way, expanding the field of attention to begin to release that pattern. And the second principle of opening up our stuck places and releasing fear, so we have expand the field of our attention, is open to a full awareness of the feelings. Our feeling level is what is controlling our life. But we don't realize that. We think it's our thinking that's that's in charge, our feeling level, but it's unconscious. Our feelings become unconscious. We become unconscious of them, actually. So our culture has taught us to suppress our emotions. Women can express some emotions. Men, really not acceptable usually for men to express a lot of emotion. Jack Kornfield shares a cartoon about this, and it's of a woman who consults a fortune teller. She goes to a fortune teller and she asks the fortune teller to tell her why her husband won't talk about his feelings. So the fortune teller looks into her crystal ball and she says, I see next January, American men will begin to talk about their feelings. Women all over the country will be sorry within minutes. So this is the conflict we face when we want to come into a full awareness of our feelings, and then what's that going to be like when they're all out there? Buddhist psychology teaches us that feelings are feelings. Bringing them into our awareness, that's essential for our awakening. Connect with our feelings, and this is a teaching called the cycle of the arising conditions. When pleasant feelings arise, we try to grasp them and hold on to them. We want them to stay, right? When unpleasant feelings arise, we want to avoid them, and so there's aversion. So this sets up a chain reaction that leads to suffering and perpetuates fear, because we're either grasping, aversion. So the practice is to learn to be aware of the feelings without grasping or avoiding them. And so to name each one as it arises, notice how you respond to it. Fear, do you generate stories around it? And just see as you're with it how you can become more free. So not free of the feeling, but free to feel the feeling and to move on. So that's the second principle, is to open and feel the full awareness of the feelings. So the third principle is to discover what is asking for acceptance. And so beyond feeling the feelings, that it's still there. Okay, we've expanded our awareness, we're feeling our feelings. If that pattern, that's the difficult visitor, is still present, to sit and be aware of what arises. And that if there are repeated patterns that continue to arise, you expand your feelings of your field of awareness, you sense what is asking for acceptance in this story in this visitor that keeps coming, in this story that keeps unfolding. How can I open my heart to this, to even this, to this story that has difficult emotions in it for me, or difficult history for me? How can I open my heart to this? So the teaching is that when we come into the full energy of that, we allow it to come into a full bloom, as you might say, of this thought, emotion, or sensation, we can move into an acceptance of all of it so that we can release it. The Dalai Lama shared that communism didn't work out because it wasn't based in compassion and love. It was based on class struggle and control, a dictatorship, dictatorial control, which in the end doesn't work to create a society that is holistic. So struggle and dictating didn't work in the outer world, in outer life. They don't work in the inner life either. The Dalai Lama taught through that awareness that we must ask ourselves what aspect of this repeated pattern is seeking our acceptance and our compassion. So the fourth principle is opening through the center. So if the first three are not enough, the fourth is to open through the center. And this is where we want to bring even more careful attention to what might be the deepest knots that we hold within us. So these are patterns we hold in our body that are knots of energy. We know that our experiences can create areas of tension, knots in the body where we hold these experiences. And so we want to focus our attention into each level of this knot, to feel into the center of it, so that we can release our identification with it and discover greater openness. So an example of this, of someone who did this, Jack Kornfield shares about a man who went to a 3-month insight meditation retreat. Can you imagine? Wouldn't that be great? 3 months to think of all that you could be aware of in 3 months. So he sat for 3 months in meditation, and he had 6 weeks of just prime meditation. He was quiet. He felt just this powerful energy within him, centered. And then after 6 weeks, a pain arose in his shoulder. And he noticed that in his practice, he became sleepy, he became disoriented, he wasn't able to concentrate anymore. And he continued like this for 3 weeks, thinking perhaps that it would pass. It didn't pass. And so he finally went to his meditation instructor, Jack Kornfield, and he described this pain in his shoulder. And Jack asked him to focus his attention into the center of this sensation in his shoulder. So the man closed his eyes and he began to describe the feeling and describe the images that were arising as he focused into the center of this pain. As he did this, all of a sudden, Jack said he noticed the man's face changed. And he recalled this vivid memory that he had when he was 16 and playing football, and he had accidentally broken a boy's arm. He said that he was feeling such power. He was feeling like a powerful football player, and he rushed the boy to block him, and he broke his arm. And that immediately afterwards, he was filled with fear and sadness and regret for having done that. And he said, I became afraid of my own power. So notice his meditations for 6 weeks had become quite powerful. And then this pain arose. And so Jack asked him, how does this connect with your meditation? And the man had a shock of recognition that came across his face, and he said, just when I was beginning to feel like I was having the most powerful meditations, my shoulder started to hurt, and it got foggy and dull, and I contracted. I think I was unconsciously afraid of this new power, that I might also cause hurt with it. As soon as he saw this clearly and felt the depth of his fear, his shoulder pain eased. He was able to move back into his meditation practice with a clear mind, and his confidence arose once again and replaced the fear and confusion and the fogginess that he had been experiencing, and his meditation opened up into the peaceful and the powerful states that he was moving into. So there are many ways to open up our stuck places. We want to recognize that as you're doing this deep work, it's important to have a teacher, a mentor, a guide to work with you through this, because it is deep emotional work, healing work. And as we do so, we discover what Unity teachings are always telling us, our true identity, our authentic nature, that of us that is eternal, that expansive self. Underneath all of the stories and the history and the pain and fear that we may have been telling ourselves is the freedom and the joy and the peace that we all seek. So I encourage you to move into these practices, being gentle with yourself, and see how you can experience greater freedom. Namaste.
Thank you for watching this message today. I'd like to invite you to join us in person here on campus at Unity of Houston for Sunday morning or Wednesday evening services. If you can't be with us here on our campus, you can still join us live on Facebook or on our website, unityhouston.org, Sunday mornings at 11 a.m. Central.